And welcome everybody to round number 3, China. And it was an exciting race, a very, very exciting race. Everything happened except probably racing and overtaking.
Yes.
Oh, it's me again. That's probably me. Hang on a second. I'll be right there. There we go. Anyway, yeah, so China, what happened? Cars started. They went off the grid. They didn't overtake each other much at the front anyway, and then the race finished. And yeah, it was a good result basically for me. Lewis Hamilton won the race, followed by Nico Rosberg, followed by probably Vettel, then Verstappen, and then the pacey pastry, as I'm going to call him now, Leclerc.
Yeah, I mean, you're gonna regret that, by the end of the year.
I'm going to be talking the pacey pastry.
Yeah,
That's what his new racing nickname is.
you're gonna regret that. That guy's fast.
He is pretty damn fast, I'll give you that.
Yeah.
But there you go. He's in the fastest car. You would expect that. So we'll see. We'll see. I think his racecraft looks pretty good as well. To be honest, he's
Yes.
he's like a young Verstappen.
Yeah, I think it's a smarter Verstappen.
Probably, yeah. Well, he seems a little more laid back anyway.
Yes. Yeah.
But that's not surprising considering Jos Verstappen, right?
Yeah. I mean, yeah. Like that guy is like the pinnacle of not being, laid out. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I saw his whole career, and take it from me, it was funny. But he wasn't exactly the fastest race driver you've ever seen, or the most consistent, except maybe in crashing. So that's ironic. But there you go. Okay, so again, pretty standard race for Lewis. He managed to come off pole. He didn't get pole, but from second place, he managed to get the jump on Bottas, and then just pulled away. And Mercedes gave him obviously first choice. He actually pitted second in the first round in order so they could make sure Bottas had second place, and which was just as well because he would have lost it otherwise. And he just drove superbly, I have to say. Really, really great race from Lewis. Just no mistakes, and it was what we come to expect from a five times world champion. So I was totally thrilled by that. We didn't see much of him in the race, which is of course expected. But what we did see was red cars. Now we saw quite a lot of those red cars.
Yeah.
Do you know why?
Yeah, because they had, I mean, what we decided to do during the race was quite shite. I mean, I'm still trying to wrap my head around what the fuck they were thinking. But I mean, okay, to be totally fair, I don't blame them too much. For I mean, I understand that they asked Leclerc to let Vettel pass. That's something I totally understand. The Vettel is the number one driver in the team. That's something which has been said from Barcelona, so that's not a surprise. I think that at the time they thought that he had a faster pace, which he hadn't. The thing which was really the most positive thing for me was how long they kept Leclerc out, not changing time, and not once but two times. I made an armchair calculation, and I think that they lost, if you consider the time, because I think they called him back in the pit 6 laps for the first team after and 8 laps for the second one. So if you just add up the amount of time that it was losing, I think it was round about 11 seconds, stuff like that. He might have easily got fourth.
Arguably, you would have come third. Well, Ferrari would have come third, fourth. I think I saw somebody and they calculated it at 20 seconds. So, obviously that is a huge hindrance. After last year, I mean, clearly they were trying to hold Mercedes up. or at least interfere with Mercedes in some way. And again, Mercedes recognised that, did the double pit stop on the second attempt, on the second set of tyres, right? And that worked out perfectly well for them. So again, kudos to Mercedes there for recognising what was going on and not falling foul of it.
Yeah, I mean, trying to keep Mercedes back, that's the only explanation that people can give. I mean, Ferrari learned from Mercedes from last year, so they yeah. The thing is that, I mean, my main problem is that they sacrificed the position, and given how fast the Mercedes were going with the first and second set of tires, they would need a plethora of cars, to stop the Mercedes. Not only one. One was not enough. So they would need, like 10 or 15 cars, which I don't know. I mean, I think that was a big mistake. But
I saw an interview with the Pastry, and he basically said that Ferrari told him they were going for second and fifth. And that's why they kept him out so long, to try and hold up the Mercedes in order for Sebastian to get second place.
Let me tell you one thing about that guy. If I were a team manager, that definitely would be a driver that I would want. Because he's way I mean, when he talks to the press, he's way less, in your face than when he's in the car. I mean, so far, I don't know what's going to happen during the season. I don't know, because he said something, like he said, well, okay. I mean, next race I'm gonna make the qualifying better. Saying that he's gonna be in front, so that would sort everything out. But he's a real team player. I've got to give the guy that. I mean, so far, and things has happened to the guy. It's not that nothing has happened and he had no chances to vent.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I love that thing. How long is it going to last? I don't know, but so far, he's a real team player. I love it.
Yeah, well, I think he has to be, obviously, because he probably wants a wage rise next year. And he will get a championship if he stays with Ferrari, presumably, because he seems to be like Stoner was with Ducatis. He seems to be able to drive it better than anybody else can, and it's a very particular kind of car, right? So,
Yes.
I hope you appreciate the analogy there.
No, I totally do, and it is actually a very interesting one, because it's way more closer than you think. So we're talking about the car. I still think that Ferrari is a better car than Mercedes right now. The problem, I think, is that this year's Ferrari is a very difficult car to set up. It's very. There was an engineer doing one of those shows to make after the race. It described the car as very pointy, so it has a very high performances, but the range in which you can attain those performances is very narrow. If you are into that range, the car is way better, and I think that explains Bahrain and even Barcelona, right?
Yeah.
Mercedes, I think it's a worse car, but it's more flat. So even if you're not really in that precise spot, you get very high performances. It's the curve is flatter. And that reminded me, for example, I don't know if you recall it, but I think it was in the 90s, Prost Ferrari was fucking amazing. It was winning everywhere because the car was really flat. The following year, they changed, the rules changed. They changed rules, well, funnily enough, with the front wing, and the car became really difficult to set up. I think we are in the same situation. If they can manage to find, the bundle of the problem, I think they have a very potentially a very fast car. it's going to be tough because it's not a given that peak of performance can be found for every track and every race. You remember 3 years ago, when we were, constantly going back and forth. Okay, depending on which race is going to be the following one, Ferrari or Mercedes was going to win because they were so different.
Yeah,
I think it's not the same thing, but the analogy is quite precise. If they can find if they can sort it out the car, I think it's a better car than it is. It has way more potential. It's more efficient, but it's difficult to find.
Yeah, I mean, I think maybe. By the way, before we go on, your microphone is a bit echoey. Do you normally use a different mic or something?
I don't know. Let me check it out.
While you're doing that, I'll have a little chat, which is to say that I think this kind of goes back to the testing in some way, because Mercedes brought a base setup to the car and base aerodynamics, which they tested, then compared. Then they brought a new set of a whole new suite of updates, which they then compared, and I think that gave them the ability to compare their changes that they do in setup to the wind tunnel, or at least the aerodynamics, so they know how they're going to advance the car throughout the year, basically, or what effects it's going to have by testing it in CAD. So, and I think they're doing the same with the setup here. They're actually able to test the setup in some way in the computer and on the simulator, which Ferrari just aren't able to do. And that's why Lewis has been struggling, because he doesn't like that kind of thing, right? Yeah. He likes to just go on the track and go, this is what the car's doing, you need to sort this out. Whereas Valtteri, he puts in the hours, obviously, and understands all of the technical details behind the car. It's very intelligent that way. So I think it suits him, and it's quicker for him to get a setup because he knows where he wants to do, what changes are going to make the difference, because he's done the sim work. So I think there's an advantage which is given Mercedes this lead, even though their car isn't quite as good and is maybe half a second slower on some tracks.
It's also a car. By the way, is the mic better?
Much better, perfect.
Yeah. By the way, there's also the fact that I think one of the reasons that because I think this year Mercedes is quite a difficult car. It's way more difficult than last year. And one of the reasons I think that why Hamilton is able to do those good races is because that's a car which has been done, which has been suited more to him than to Bottas. Now, Bottas, as you said, puts way more work, so he probably has overcome, those things that he doesn't feel about. But you're right. I see your point, and I think it's a fair point.
Yeah, I mean, again, I just think it's. Again, it points to the same thing you're saying, that it's a wider area of setup for the Mercedes because they've made it wider deliberately,
it's easier if you start. This is in general in racing. If you start from a good platform, from last year, you do things following the same route. If you're trying to catch up, which all the other cars except Mercedes have to do, you got to try to find performances, in a very more specific way, and in it's got to be more extreme, right?
Yeah.
So, and if you see, that's basically what has happened, like talking about other cars with Red Bull, for years now. Red Bull has always made cars which were working extremely well only in certain conditions under certain terms, and all besides the lack of the races or what would have happened. But if you look at the performances, there were cars which were working only in very specific ranges and in very specific conditions. And this is what you have to do, because you go for the peak performance, and then eventually when you find it, you work from that point and you just mellow the curve. Nobody right now is in a position to do that because Mercedes is a very good car, because last year, even if I still think that the Mercedes and Ferrari were basically on the same level, they yet to overcome the fact that Lewis had an exceptional year last year. So if it is one thing to beat a car, it is one thing to beat a package. And right now, people are trying to beat a package, which is Mercedes and Lewis.
Yeah.
They're not really worried about Bottas because, again, I think you made a very interesting point, a very good point. I mean, I think that the performances of Bottas this year are mostly to be related to the fact that he put a lot of work in the simulator, and he's way more confident on the car than Lewis. So yeah, that's a very good point, actually. And I thought about that.
He starts out quicker and therefore gets closer to his ideal setup.
Mm-hmm.
But and again, we know setup is about turning the tires on and keeping them fresh. So and Lewis is an expert at keeping tires fresh, right? So again, it's one of those things. At least in his interview after, he said that was what he had to do to win this race. He had to change his driving style somewhat, especially in qualifying, not to push so much on the front end, which is his normal driving style, is to be very front end happy and get it into the corner sharp. But he said in order to get the pole this weekend, he had to actually reduce that, not and feed it in and treat it like it had understeer.
Yeah, it's an oversimplification. I mean, that's the end result. In order to achieve that, is not only the driving style. I mean, it's how you set up the car, what is the rake, the differential, how you set up a different. I mean, it's a huge amount of data that you got to put in it, and then you tell the driver, listen, this is the best package we have. This is the pace we're running, and in order, for us to run at this pace, you're going to drive it in a certain way. So it's the end result of a lot of input which comes in the package, and the driver is part of the package. So yeah,
absolutely. And again, Lewis is an expert of getting that right on race day. I mean, he really does. I mean, it was an outstanding race by him. I feel he would have. There was no chance Ferrari could have beaten him at that Grand Prix. I don't think. But anyway, we can only go on. I mean, this is a bad news race for Ferrari, effectively, because, of course, China is representative of quite a few circuits. It does have slow speed and medium speed corners. It is front end dictated by the front end. It is a downforce circuit, right? So, this is not good news for the rest of the season for Ferrari.
No, you're right. I mean, I think that we still have to keep it. Well, if I'm right, we still have to keep into consideration, what I said before. I mean, this is bad news. You're right. But given the car that they have this year, it's not unexpected, Well, I know in hindsight, I mean, unexpected is the wrong word. It's comprehensible. If that's the problem, you can understand why the performances, and I think that's a big problem. It's not the problem that they didn't perform in China. It's the problem is that they didn't manage to perform. I don't know. Well, I'm not clear enough, but I hope you get what I'm trying to say.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, the drivers complained about tires. Both of them said they couldn't keep the tires in. So I mean. I'm still confident that it's the tires, right? Pirelli tires that are doing the problem here for Ferrari, at least anyway. Just in case you complain about me not saying it's tires.
I can mark that because I was waiting. Okay.
Leclerc said, once he got behind Vettel, once he let Vettel past, his tires went off straight away. So, he couldn't do anything and he fell back for that reason. He wasn't blaming Ferrari necessarily. Again, great PR. He's the right stuff, I'll tell you that. And, I can see he wants the 30 million page pay packet next year. You can tell that much as well. And maybe he'll get it if Red Bull come looking.
Oh, I'm sorry. Before you switch to Red Bull, because you reminded me a point I want to make before, because that's the second time you said about Leclerc, trying to be careful and stuff like that. I think that Leclerc's position in Ferrari is way more stronger contract-wise than you might think. Leclerc is the first product from the Ferrari Academy, and is a fucking good product, right? I mean,
yeah.
When I don't know if I said that last broadcast, but there was a. Did I tell you the story about Jules Bianchi when it was? Okay, so this is a story which goes on. You know, there was a journalist which recalled that, and when Jules Bianchi, you know, they went to Ferrari first. You know, they tried the Ferrari and blah blah blah, because he was the first product, okay, of the Ferrari Academy, and then that happened. And there was Leclerc, at the same table. They were eating and all the stuff. And one journalist said, how do you feel, being so fast and all that shit? And Jules said, well, I don't know why you're saying I'm fast, because there is a very fast driver at this table, and it's not me. It's Leclerc, which was, I think, at the time was 16 years old or stuff like that. So the fact that it's coming from that big project that Ferrari set up, I think that puts him in a very good position, because they have to push him, right? Because it's the result of many years of investment. So yeah,
the same with Lewis. Lewis had the same thing with McLaren, right? And Verstappen had the same thing with Red Bull. So
yeah.
No, I completely agree that his position is secure, and he can afford to say these things on the radio.
Right.
He was off that he was asked to get to let Seb overtake.
You can ask Ricciardo if Verstappen wasn't the pinnacle of a school like the one is coming from, right?
No, my point was that last year Kimi was paid 30 million to race for Ferrari. And that's nowhere near what they're paying Leclerc. So
who wouldn't pay 30 millions to have Kimi in his car?
Well, Alfa Romeo, apparently.
All jokes aside, only from
all jokes aside, I think they're paying him like 8.5 million or something.
Just the visibility that guy gives you. It's insane, right? He has.
Yeah, but that means Kimi's taken a 23 million pay drop.
Yeah, but Kimi doesn't fucking care.
I think he cares about 23 million. Even Kimi.
I'm not really sure about that. I might be wrong. I might be wrong. I'm not really sure about that.
Yeah, maybe not. I don't know.
I don't think
I would care, even if I had 20 million in the bank.
No. Yeah, me and you and most of the persons that we know probably would. Mm-hmm. That guy, I think, is in a class of his own. It's really peculiar, to say the least.
To say the least. Did you see him with that award show?
Yeah.
He was pissed out of his face. Just staggering on the stage, and Vettel didn't know what to do.
Can you? You cannot find another person like him right now in the circus. It's insane,
Yeah, very true.
And he's the same person, Ricciardo, which is another, very flamboyant person, right now in Renault is not as flamboyant as he used to be. Yeah. That guy races for Alfa Romeo, and by the way, is making excellent results, and he still doesn't give a flying fuck. The same thing that he did when he was in Ferrari, the same thing that he did when he was in Lotus, in McLaren. You name it. It's the same guy.
Yeah, very much so. Very much so.
Yeah, how can you not love the guy?
Everybody loves Kimi.
Right.
That's for sure. Okay, are there any other standouts that you wanted to mention?
Sure. Well, no, not really. The race was really boring, as you said.
Yeah, well, apart from Toro Rosso.
Oh yeah. Albion made a very good race. He started from the pit, and I think he arrived a 10th or
10th.
Yeah. 10th. So that was really good. I'm still disappointed with Giovinazzi. I think it's a big problem. The guy hasn't been raced for 2 years, but still, it's wow.
Yeah,
So
that car might be a little bit more difficult to drive than we're giving Kimi credit. I mean, Kimi could be really out driving the car somewhat.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be the case. And other disappointments. I mean, I was really bummed by McLaren.
Yeah, well, the torpedo is where I was going to go with that.
Oh, okay.
Right. Yeah. The other Toro Rosso, driven by Kvyat, the torpedo.
Yeah.
Managed to torpedo both McLarens in one move.
Right.
And really, it's because he put his foot down in the tight corner, right, and the car stepped out on him, right, which it's going to do. But you know, that's still a driver error as far as I'm concerned. I'm glad he got a penalty.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I totally agree. It's a good thing for Gasly, because Gasly is really bad with Red Bull, but he can be pretty sure that it's not Kvyat which is going to replace him.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, I wouldn't be so sure about Albon, but you know, I think Gasly has a very hot seat right now, and if there is a team in the circus right now which has showed that they absolutely give no fuck on changing, you know, drivers during the season, it's Red Bull.
Yeah, so, although to do it to Kvyat twice would, of course, be the end of his career. So.
Well, yeah, no. But now I'm referring more to Gasly, which is really, really bad in the Red Bull, right? So he doesn't have to worry about Kvyat because Kvyat is out. But yeah, I think he has to watch for Albon. So yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, yeah, my mistake. Yeah, I meant they were going to drop Kvyat at the same time and drop Gasly and Kvyat, you know, and replace them with like some academy drivers. Which is why I thought of, you know, they might be able to steal Leclerc for the right price. I mean, if they offer Leclerc 30 million next year, who knows? He might just turn around and go, do you know what? I'm not going to win with Ferrari because, you know.
Well, okay, is he going to win with Red Bull?
It might do. I mean, the Honda's coming on leaps and bounds, and if by the end of this year he's been beaten by Verstappen, potentially, you know.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I don't think that at the end of the year Verstappen will be ahead of Leclerc. I don't see that. I mean, everything can happen, but
depends how team orders go. I would say, you know. I mean, if he keeps getting shunted back, he might break and just go, look, I'm not putting up with this, you know. But again, it would have to be for a huge price, and whether Red Bull would want to have two really strong drivers again, I don't know. You know what I mean? So
I also think that Leclerc contract is pretty much, you know, tighten up. I don't know if he can really change and go whatever the fuck he wants, at least for 2 or 3 years. I'm not pretty sure about that.
Normally they do have buyout clauses, but you might be right. Leclerc may not have the pacey pastry.
I mean, you'll regret that.
I think he's going to catch on.
Let's see. I don't know.
It's a bit of a tongue twister, but the pasty pastry is definitely a great name for it. But there you go. I mean, it's better than crushed Stappen. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
So there you go. Okay, so yeah, in all, I mean, I think it was a pretty defining race for the year. It definitely puts Lewis in the driving seat, so to speak. And Ferrari looking like they need to really tighten up their game and come up with something a lot better. Fortunately, they got Baku. And if they do have this power advantage and speed advantage down the straights, then Baku's the place that's going to show it.
Yeah.
So again, if Ferrari can't do anything at Baku, then it really is bad. We're going to have to wait till Singapore, you know what I mean? Because that's the next track that's completely different. So we'll see.
I think they have a lot of work to do in Maranello in these days.
Huge.
They gotta, try to sort out that car because,
huge. And even if they sort out the car, they still need to sort out the tyres and keeping the tyres alive. So it's just a massive hill as far as I can see. Which is why I would say, to them, let Leclerc do his thing. Give Leclerc the full reign. And you're going to score more points over the season that way.
Well, I mean, again, right now, it is very defined who is the first driver and who is the second in Ferrari.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, it always is a Ferrari, right? Nothing's changed there.
Well, I mean, there were times that wasn't so,
Name one. You can name one. Monza last year, maybe. That's the only race I can think of.
No. I'm not talking about in recent years, but that's not always been the case.
Have you not heard about Mansell? when he moved to Ferrari, right, as the number one driver.
Yeah.
Then they hired another driver, right, who was a world champion 4 times or 3 times.
Mm-hmm.
And he just signed the contract and said, "Yeah, I'm number 2 driver, no problem."
Well, okay, Mansell. I mean, we might make a show on Mansell alone, because Mansell was one of the guys which, and I think one of the best contracts ever in Ferrari. Did you know that he had in his contract set up that they basically gave him a Ferrari dealership in the Isle of Man?
Oh yeah.
So,
but did you realise that when he was signed in that second year, he signed as a number 2 driver?
Oh yeah, of course.
Right. Okay. So yeah, they've always had this, right? That's my point. Even Mansell, right? As soon as Prost comes into the team, Mansell goes, "Yeah, okay, I'll sign number 2 as long as you're paying me the money. I don't give a shit,"
Well, I don't know. Anyway, we've got to see how it happens. Right now they will give priority to Leclerc if that's the case. I mean, if the performances are there and the results are there. But right now, all jokes aside, I don't really think that we can blame a team that has Sebastian Vettel and another driver if they give priority to Vettel. I think it would be unfair, someone seriously put up, that line of thought.
Yeah, well, I'm not convinced, having been, on the other side of it. McLaren famously never favoured their drivers. Not that they had 2 world-class drivers, but Mercedes didn't in the Rosberg year and the year before that. So maybe for the sake of the sport more than anything, they were persuaded to do that. Rather than consciously wishing to do it, but nonetheless, they let them race.
Hold on a second. If you are Mercedes and you have Hamilton and Rosberg, and they're basically racing another championship, you can just say, "Okay, guys, do whatever the fuck you want." I mean, they would not have been able to lose that championship if they tried, right? Mm. So that's a different thing. But if you're chasing up, you try to point on someone which is on paper at least is more consistent and fast and is shown to be. And again, I mean, if you're Force India, you can do that. If you're Alpha, you might want to do that. If you're a top team, I mean, there is a lot of money involved, and every point counts. So I don't know. I mean, I can't really blame the guys, but
no, that's fair enough. That is more than fair enough. Okay, then. So as I say, we got Baku presumably in 2 weeks' time. I haven't checked. Maybe you want to while I'm wrapping up. I don't know. Basically, yeah. So China, we come away with a few questions answered. Baku, I think, will finally answer all of the questions. And are just in time then for Barcelona with all the upgrades, and then it all goes thrown open again. I mean, it brings upgrades. So we'll have to see how that works. But
I mean, I'm way more puzzled from China than I was before. So I don't think that China gave a lot of answers. It gave a lot of questions. So yeah, we'll see. We'll see what happens.
A lot of questions for Ferrari, that's for sure. But it showed up the weaknesses, and that's the point. Is their aerodynamics are not as good as they should be. I still feel that they're lacking power. Even though they had a slight speed advantage, I still feel that they're not as quick as they should be, and therefore it still holds to my thesis that they're having cooling issues in order to keep the engines for as long as they did. I mean, you can only have 3 engines this year, so that's a huge restriction. And I think Mercedes have just done a better job all round so far. The fact that they're fast at China and Lewis was able just to pull away, that's a huge thing for me, because this circuit is a downforce circuit, which means most of the circuits are like that this year. well, for the rest of the year anyway, with a few exceptions like Monza, like Baku, which is the next race, of course. But
talking about Mercedes, was it true that they had to go back to? They tried a new wing and they had to go back to the old one because it wasn't, regular.
yeah.
I
saw a picture of the new wing. It had a slight cutaway on the end plate, and that obviously was deemed illegal. So they put the old one back on again. So yeah, I don't think they'll be able to use it at all this year. I don't even think they can modify it, right? So.
Well, as far as I, and that's why I asked, because I just read about it, but passing by. But as far as the reason why it was deemed illegal, it shouldn't be that much difficult to modify the wing, unless the shape of the barge boards, on the side were so important for the new wing. Because basically what I read was the fact, by rules, if you see the wing from the side, the barge boards have to cover all the winglets in the wing.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's not a very difficult thing to fix, unless the reason why you shape the barge board, only works with that shape. So, fixing that would be pointless. So
yeah, it's a bigger cutaway basically than they had on the previous wing design. So I don't see how they can put some back and it still be the same shape, right? And they can't increase the size of the wing, so or the end plate, so they can't do that. All they would be able to do would be to reduce the size of the actual winglets, which of course is reducing downforce. So I don't think they can do that either. So I just think they'll have to bin it and try some other modification.
So we'll see.
Yeah, indeed.
In Baku.
Okay, so yeah, it was a pretty good race in all. There were some outstanding races in the midfield. We haven't mentioned much of them because they were mainly disappointing, I would say.
Yeah, it wasn't also that much interesting as it was, last race, for example. Even midfield, nothing really interesting happened. So.
Yeah, which is China. They do tend to go 2 by 2. So because it's such a defining track, and that's why I'm thrilled personally.
Good job for China, by the way. Happy for that.
Yeah, absolutely. Hulkenberg unlucky again, of course, but there was too many contacts in the first thing with the torpedo going in there. Terrible. I had to mention the name again. Also, disappointing that Ferrari's tyres didn't last. Damn Pirellis. There you go. Thanks, everybody. It's been a great, and I'll just say goodbye.